Welcome to this week's meetup for the GoDaddy community, a small business community where we highlight entrepreneurs that are just challenging the way we think and the way we're adapting, evolving, and creating, right? The entire reason we have these meetups is to share stories and to visualize and enable people to see where others have made stride or transition or success. And I'm excited today because we've got Chris Stanley with us today. He made a transition out of the corporate world and into his own world as a real estate investor and owner. And he's going to share a little bit about his story. Before we get started, we're going to have the team members here that are hosting this and supporting us introduce themselves. So I'll go first. My name is Adam Griggs. I am the co-founder of a software company called CLARAfi, and I am so happy to be here today.
Hi, everybody. I am Rachel McCool from GoDaddy. I manage experiences for our customers through community, and very happy to be here as well and to hear your story, Chris.
And hi, my name is Jonathan. I work for the social media team, the brand social media team, engaging with our customers and building strategies around how we talk to them. And I've been also working closely with community and join Rachel and saying how excited I am to hear from you today. We've been on an amazing streak of guests, and I am sure you are going to have some amazing contributions to that. So looking forward to it. Thanks for joining us today.
I really appreciate you guys having me. I was honored to be asked, and I'm happy to be here. So thank you.
Well, the pressure's on, Chris.
Yeah.
You got to enlighten us all, right?
Hit the bar high. Yeah.
We're getting to the end of everybody's matriculation period. People are coming into hopefully summer breaks and some relaxation. The world's opening back up, and there's possibilities in front of us. So I want to hear about your story and your transition. Why don't you share with the community members here kind of the backstory of Chris and your journey through the corporate world, and then what brought you to your transition over the last 12 months?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm originally from a small town, Southern Ohio. It's about 5,000 people, called Waverly. And I was raised by a single mom back in Waverly. And, growing up from an early age, I saw my mom go in and out of work. She was a contract employee with the federal government, which meant there was some instability because, as the political winds changed or a contract went to another company, everybody was scrambling, so there were a lot of times when I would have, my mom would come home and say, well, we're gonna have to tighten up here because I don't know how long I'm gonna be laid off for. And that happened a number of times. My dad, I had a good relationship with my dad, even though I was raised by a single mom. He was in construction, which is also volatile, so he would do road construction or building construction or whatever. And so he was also laid off from time to time when I was younger. And so I saw both my parents going through that. And I think that instilled in me a little bit of this financial drive. In high school, I thought I really wanted to start my own business. And the other thought that I had was I want to go and get a finance degree. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, Chris Stanley Investments or something like that. And, everybody here in Waverly is going to come to my office, and I'm going to be the best stock picker ever, and we're all going to get rich. Waverly, Ohio is going to be the economic mecca of the world. That's what I was going to do when I was in high school. Well, I went to college. I went to Ohio University down in Athens, Ohio. Which if you're ever passing through Ohio, I highly recommend you go check it out. It's an awesome place, college town down there in the southeast corner of Ohio. And so I went there, studied finance. And what I learned is that my idea of having this dream job of picking stocks and being an investor and having people come in and invest with me is actually two jobs, two careers, right? There's a mutual fund manager or hedge fund manager, the person that's actually on Wall Street probably working 100 hours a week, 80 hours a week, trying to get an edge so they can pick the right stocks to fill their portfolio. And then there's a sales team, right? And I didn't really want to do either of those things alone. So what I ended up doing, I also always had an interest in going to law school. That was one thing that I kicked around for a long time. And so that's what I did. So after OU, I went straight through law school at Ohio State. That landed me here in Columbus, Ohio. And I came out of law school during the Great Recession. So, everybody was scrambling for jobs at that time, me included. There were interviews posted for job positions that we just saw disappear overnight when the market crashed, And so it was kind of rough, but it ended up being a blessing in disguise for me because I caught on with a small business. It was a $100 million revenue company when I started. And I never would have probably found that career path had, the financial crisis not existed. So what looked like a negative turned out to be a really big opportunity for me because I caught on with Broad Street Partners, is the company I worked for 10 years, and it grew like wildfire. And I was right there, to see it, and had a front row seat and was able to contribute a lot and learn a lot as we grew. And at age 29, I became the general counsel of Broad Street Partners, and held that position for about 6 years until January, when I transitioned out. I'm still consulting with them a little bit, but it's a fairly small position at this point. And I was very fortunate to catch on with them because I learned so much about business, and so much about investing. Because basically what that company did is it invests in insurance agencies throughout the country. And insurance agencies and real estate, which is what I do now, are very similar. They're cash flow machines. They're recession proof. There are a lot of things in common that I was able to transfer my skills over from my career as a lawyer for this business over to my real estate business. So as Adam alluded to, the end of January, I transitioned out of my full-time position as a lawyer, and I am now running a real estate investment business that my wife and I have been building over the last 8 years. We own 52 rental units here in Central Ohio, and we have 15 in contracts. We'll be at 67 here in about 2 weeks, and we're planning to get to 100 by the end of the year. And we're looking to get into larger multifamily, some apartment complexes, and things like that. So we're finding opportunity despite the hot market right now. And we've also been very fortunate in the past few years here that Columbus has been a very friendly market for anybody who owns real estate. It's been rising rapidly. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell, from 36 years of existence to this point in time.
Yeah, I love the theme in your story. There's a theme around community, right? You always empowered yourself through the way that you were impacted by your community and how you contributed to it. Since being raised by your mom, right? And then having a good relationship with your dad, that instilled the need to be financially savvy. And you had this passion for helping your hometown. So you went and you got these educational pieces, and yes, it didn't work out as far as you originally thought, right? So many of us had dreams as kids that we wanted to do something, and then we get, we get to a position of education and perspective, and we realize maybe that's not what it's about, and we have to pivot. And you went to law school, and during the driest opportunity time there was, right? During the financial crisis of 2008, you still had to find an opportunity and run with it. And like you said, it was a blessing in disguise, and that's only transitioned you to be where you're at today because you were able to build off of that and relate with that. But I love that you took it a step forward. Your journey with Broad Street and becoming general counsel, and you were a young guy to be running general counsel for such a powerhouse of a firm. So that just shows your character first and foremost. But what you were doing was having conversations with people all the time. You were opening your world and having conversations. And when you do that, there's contribution in that. It's give and take, and people feel empowered. You feel empowered, and that's what's enabled you to grow and kind of rise to the occasion. And I love that. So tell us a little bit about what you feel going forward. I mean, again, you said opportunity is still happening right now, right? So tell us how that affects you and your community.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is opportunity right now. And, I echo what you said there, Adam. I think, so much about business, any business, including real estate, maybe even especially real estate, is relationships. So when I was starting to try and grow my portfolio quickly, I had kind of a hard time in the beginning because, number one, I had no clue what I was doing. And number two, nobody knew who I was, so I was out there trying to make offers on properties. I mean, I was talking to you around that time, Adam, I remember, and you introduced me to a couple of people in town here that were very beneficial. But I would make an offer on a property that I wanted, and I didn't have enough money to make a cash offer. So that was my first, negative. And then also, nobody, I had no credibility because I hadn't done any deals. Right. And so I'd make an offer and they'd say, well, this other person offered 10 grand less, but I know they're going to close. I have no clue who you are. I don't think you're going to close. And so I realized I had to have an edge if this was going to work. I had to find an edge that made me unique, so I could actually get a deal done. Because I tried for over 6 months, maybe 8 months, making offers. I mean, I was working hard and nothing was happening. I had no results to show for it other than a lot of stress and just failure. I mean, it was nothing was working. So what I started to do is network. So I started to talk to anybody who would sit down with me that was in real estate. And I also started driving to work a different way. I started driving through residential neighborhoods instead of taking the interstate. And I would go a different way every day. And I would write down the addresses of every house that had a for sale sign or a for rent sign. And I would call them. I'd find time, that same day, and I'd call every single one of them, and I would try and buy the home, right? So even the for rent signs, like those are the ones I thought nobody else is calling these people trying to buy the house, right? They're tenants trying to call them, but right now that's a vacant property. So maybe somebody's going to want to sell. Well, that didn't work, but it actually turned into something that was very powerful that I could not have seen coming. And what it was, there was a guy he was a real estate agent in Columbus, and he had listed a duplex over by the Columbus airport. And I was driving around over there and called this sign, and I tried to work out, an offer with him. And he said, "Look, same thing everybody else has been saying. I don't know who you are. I don't think you're going to close." And I said, "Well, why don't you just present the offer to your client anyway, and we'll see where it goes." And so he agreed to do that, but he also said, "Don't get your hopes up. And look, I've sold 25 properties for this guy, including apartment buildings and all this stuff." And I heard him basically tell me that he is one of the largest volume, investment property real estate brokers in town, and I'd never heard of the guy before. And so I asked him to get a cup of coffee. He and I sat down for a cup of coffee, and that relationship right there is what was able to get me started in closing deals. Because basically what I ended up doing is borrowed his credibility. His name was known all over town, and he vouched for me and said, "Yeah, Chris is going to close. He take him seriously. He's a good guy. He's going to close this deal." And when he said that, everybody listened. And I did close, thankfully, that first deal, and it was an 8-unit package of properties. And so then from there, it was. I had credibility all of a sudden, right? When I made an offer, I could say, "Yeah, hey, I just closed on this 8-unit package. I'm the real deal. I'm going to close." And so that was a huge step forward for me. And if I hadn't made those phone calls, to people, then I never would have met that guy. And there's a concept that I believe in. I call it the surface area of success, which is that concept basically, right? So the more exposure you can have to opportunities, people, and ideas that can push you forward, the more likely, just by pure math, the more likely you're going to have success, because your odds are up, right? The other piece of that is I try to focus on really big upside things, right? Like I want to find those, 1 in 1,000 opportunities. And the only way that you're going to find it, you're never going to be able to find them by like planning it out, right? Like, here's my next 10 steps. I'm going to take this step, and then that's going to lead me to this next step. That's never how it works, at least in my experience and the people that I've seen who are really successful. The way it works is people get out there and find ways to, expose themselves to opportunity. And that's what leads to these, bigger opportunities. And that's how I started being able to close real estate deals. Never would have thought I'd meet this guy. Never would have thought it would have led to what it led to. But, after meeting him, that was huge for me. And I've had a couple other experiences like that too, where, I never would have thought I'd meet somebody at a networking event, but they turned out to be, an amazing teammate and a mutually beneficial relationship. So I agree with you, Adam. I think community is huge in any business, and probably even more so in real estate than most.
I love that. That's such a great share. I mean, not just on the community aspect and knowing that other people impacted your life, and that's powerful, right? Because sometimes we put a lot of effort behind something we can't see the finish line. We just don't know what we're doing. But not just that, it's the patience and perseverance in your story, right? You're a guy who has credibility in your realm as general counsel of a large firm, but transitioning into the world of real estate and investment, you had zero credibility. And that's kind of a gut check, right?
Yeah.
Where's the ego at that point? Do we check it at the door? Do we speak up, So
Right.
I love that.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to jump in. I mean, thank you for being so open about your story and showing your vulnerability, because I think that's really important, that anybody that shifts in career, you have to start sometimes from almost zero again, and that is really hard to do. And in fact, that's why most people don't do it, right? Because they get stuck in things that they don't enjoy doing. And so I give you huge kudos for that. Also, having grown up in even a smaller town than you grew up in, I know how that's having vision sometimes is really difficult, because the town that you grow up in is so tiny, and it's hard to foresee the possibilities, especially if you don't have any mentors in town or people that maybe are doing something that you're interested in. So that's really great that, you know, like your story about being 29 and being the general counsel at a large company, that's pretty amazing. I find it fascinating too, just with real estate and the market right now, which is pretty crazy in a lot of different places. And, you know, being able to sniff out properties that aren't, you know, that are still reasonably priced, that definitely has to have a large network in order to do that, and the credibility. Because,
Yep.
you know, I live in California, and, you know, the bidding activity out here again is just insane. And I'm
Absolutely.
assuming that's, you know, potentially in your area as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, the market it's nuts, and, you know, stuff will hit the market and it's just gone. I mean, you know,
Mhm.
as soon as it hits, it's gone, and it doesn't even really matter what the price is anymore. It feels like, you know, I mean, people are listing stuff for 20% higher than what the comps in the area are, and they're still going over asking price. So it's absolutely crazy. You know, so the way that I approach it, I mean, our model is really, it's a little bit unique compared to what others, you know, look at. So most of the people that I talk to, like, there's like the golden rule of investing is what people refer to it as, of real estate investing. And it's buy the property for 70% of what it's worth after repair. I've heard that a million times by, you know, from tons of really successful people. I think that's really good advice, but I also think that lends itself to a little bit of actually more risk than you might think, because in a market like this, you know, if the properties are, you know, overvalued by 30%, and that's going to dip back down, guess what? You're paying fair market value for them. You're paying retail, really, right? If they dip back. So what we focus on, we definitely want to buy into some equity, and we believe that you make your money when you buy, you know, and you get paid when you sell, right? So we're not going to, you know, have hopes and dreams that it's going to appreciate. We don't buy on speculation. What we focus on is cash flow. And I'm very fortunate to be living in, you know, the Midwest and in Columbus, because there are pockets of properties still in Columbus that check a few boxes that we look at. Really what we're looking for is, I never want to buy a property unless it's going to cash flow 15% cash on cash return. So if every dollar I've got invested, I want 15 cents coming back to me every year. Not every market, you know, I bet you in California, you're not going to find that. I know in New York, you're not going to find it, but there are some pockets here in Columbus that you can find that. So then we apply criteria number two. We want to buy in areas that we believe are going to appreciate faster on average than the other properties here in Columbus. And what we look for there is a catalyst. We look for, you know, what is it that we think is going to drive the value up? And so there's a hospital here in town that's growing very rapidly and completely transforming the area. So we have a lot of stuff right around there, and luckily we bought in, you know, relatively early on those. So those worked out really well. There's another area in town where they're redeveloping a large. It used to be where they stored trolley cars a long time ago, and they're making this new district that's going to have an outdoor market and like all kinds of really cool stuff. So we bought a bunch of stuff over there, and that's worked out really well. So, you know, we're able to find those deals. They're really hard to find right now, and they're really competitive. But again, this goes back to that concept, the surface area of success concept, which I'm a big believer in. The other aspect of that is I like to talk to people who can bring large volume of deals. So instead of at this point going out and trying to find one house, or, you know, outbid somebody on an on-market property, you know, when it's listed on the open market, what we do is we go and we try and find people who have access to a lot of deals that we can see before everybody else sees them. You know, so I'm talking to real estate agents. I'm talking to what are called wholesalers. Those are people that go out and put properties in contract. And, you know, for people that are looking to sell, but they don't necessarily want to sell them on the open market for whatever reason. And, you know, that's how we're finding a lot of our deals right now, is networking with those people. And again, it all comes back down to that credibility thing, right? I mean, if I didn't have the credibility and the reputation of closing, then I wouldn't be getting those leads. And so we just try and, you know, treat everybody good that brings us the leads. And, you know, if we can't do a deal for whatever reason, or we don't like the deal, we'll tell them, you know, that's too high or whatever. But if it's a deal that makes sense, we're going to find a way to close it. And that's been working for us. So, but yeah, it's definitely harder now than it was 3 years ago. There's so much money out there, a lot of out of state money right now in Columbus too. I think the secret's out that it's you know, that there are pockets that you can make money in. So, but yeah, we're able to find them, but it's just a lot of work right now to drum them up.
Yeah, Jonathan, did you have something?
Yeah, I love this hand raise thing. I'm so Zoom. It's been 15 months, but I still just talk over people. So I love that. You are like you are like the king of community. This is so much of this, so much of your success and so much of what you've learned, I mean, you've given so much credit to so many other people who have helped you along the way. And there's obviously all the work you put into it and all the hours and all the money, and you pulled yourself up from really having no, as you said, no credibility. But what I find so impressive about what you've done, and what I think is so important for this group in particular, is that there's so much to be said about just not giving up on pushing yourself to put yourself out there, and to say, I got turned down 6 times, 7 times, 8 times, but I'm not going to let that compromise what I feel the value I can bring is. You know what I mean? I think there's something so incredible about viewing those as they're not failures as much as they're just, you don't fail until you give up, right? You don't fail until you actually give up on something. So that idea that you've just looked at them as obstacles, and that led you to meet this guy who introduced you to all of these different opportunities, it really goes to show, I think, that whatever you want to do, especially for people who are kind of starting out at scratch. I mean, you were a finance degree and a lawyer. You definitely had a lot of education, a lot of understanding there. But to start at zero within this new industry, I think it's so encouraging to hear that. No, I just put myself out there, and I kept meeting new people, and I kept saying no, like, just believe me. And then someone finally did, and it paid off. And I think I've said, I can't keep coming back to it, but whenever we talk to someone who is, nervous, or especially working in engagement, who's, I'm trying to start a new business, but I don't want to fail. I'm trying to start a new business. It's my dream. And I just wanted to come try. I just wanted to work. This is such a testament to what happens when you just say, no, I want to do this, and I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to do it as long as I can. Yeah. And there was one other thing you said that I wrote down that I really, really liked. I loved how formulaic you had that. I loved that you looked at it in the terms of math, because I find there's something very comforting in that. There's something very comforting in knowing, like, I may have met 5 people today, and it was a bust on paper, but I know formulaically that with 5 new people in my contacts, 5 new people who know who I am, I might not be as close as I want to be, but damn it, I got a little closer today. And yeah. that was really, really, I think that's very powerful. And that's something that I think whatever industry you're in, I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. I might get that embroidered and hang that somewhere on my apartment. I think that was really, really powerful.
I'll tell you what, the funny thing on that. So what I used to do is, every time I'd have somebody who I think might be a lead, for a deal, I used to carry this sheet of paper around, and I would always update it, but I would have a list of, like, top priority to call, next priority. I would just work my way down that list, and sometimes I would exhaust the list and not have anything. It's funny because the guy that I ended up meeting, who, helped me out a lot, was the contact that really helped me get credibility. He was on the list once, and I called him. We're going to get coffee, and then he had to reschedule. So I put him back on the list, because he was at the bottom at that point, because so I was calling these other people, and then, like, a couple weeks later, he rose back to the top, thankfully, and I called him again. But we always had that list of people we were going to call, try and find a deal and trying to get something going. So that was a key strategy there. The other thing I'll say,
smart. That is so smart.
The other thing I'll say, based on what you said there, I think the reason that I was able to keep going is, so back in college, I lived in this big yellow house with 7 other guys, 8 of us, and it was awesome. I mean, we had a great time. But we were paying, like, I feel like it was over $1,000 on rent each, I think. And maybe I don't know if I remember that right. That feels really high, but I remember rent being really high. And one night after class, I came home from class, and I was a little bit nerdy, I guess, because I pulled out my laptop and I did a valuation calculation. We just learned that in my finance class on how to value an asset. So I valued the house I was living in, like, what's this thing worth and how much cash flow does it spin off for the guy that owns it? And I was never able to forget that, just the result of that, because it was so powerful. Like, he's making more than some of the entry-level jobs I could have with my finance degree that I just paid how much money for, by him having this house, which costs much less, I'm sure, than my degree did. He's making more than I'm going to make, as an entry-level, finance guy. So that stuck with me and kind of grew over the years. And so I knew it would work if I could just, get that momentum going. And I knew plenty of people that had done it. And so I figured I could do it. But that really, drove me, seeing the power that real estate has.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. That's really cool. And for what it's worth, I love Columbus, Ohio. I love Columbus, Ohio.
Cool. Yeah, it's a great place. I like it a lot.
Great. It's
Not
great,
too
great,
big,
great.
not too small. That's my take on it. So
Yeah, the short north. Oh man, I could
Yeah,
stay there for
awesome.
forever. I could stay there.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a great place.
This has been great conversation so far on just the power of perspective and patience. But going back to what you guys are talking about on the power of community and leveraging and building that, I feel like that is the proof that's in your concept, right? The concept of success, the surface area of success is based on our ability to connect and leverage and work and transition and make sure that we're making ourselves available. And I feel like if people want to get into real estate, they now have seen and heard your story, and that gives them such great confidence to know that they can do it. But it goes further than that. If you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to get into a new industry, find your catalyst. Maybe it's not a neighborhood, maybe it's an association, maybe it's a growing fad, maybe it's a new group of people. Find a mentor. And your story has been such a powerful piece of the puzzle for so many of our community members that are listening to this today.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it comes down to ideas, people, and opportunities. Those are the three things that can vault you forward, and so exposing yourself to as much of that as you can, and networking with people, and also being willing to help too, right? I mean, it's not a, hey, I'm looking for you to help me. It's always, what can I offer? What value can I add? I think that's the right way to go about it. And I think you can do anything if you apply that concept.
Go ahead, Chris.
I did have a couple of things that I noted as well. I really enjoyed your presentation, Chris. It was very, very, anyone who's interested in going into business, especially a service business, should hear your story there.
Thanks.
May I recommend that you get a book called The Little Engine That Could? Because I think I can is probably one of the best analogies of what you actually were doing and moving forward with it. And that's what any good entrepreneur actually has to do. Likewise, the other thing that I heard from another book perspective is Who Moved My Cheese is infamous. What would you do if you weren't afraid? Go do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you were doing that exactly, and making the connections, and you found a mentor to really help you navigate the waters much more effectively, and you made those connections. Stumbling blocks are only stumbling blocks if you don't learn from them and if you let them defeat you. If you move forward, you can have massive success, as you found. Congratulations and kudos.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I would even take that a step further and build on that. I think the adversity is actually where growth occurs. I mean, if you're not having any adversity or any struggles, then you're not growing, right? I mean, that's where you find out, kind of, how can I move forward, right? That's where you learn the skills to push things forward. So I think the adversity is really important. I know a guy that I met at my time with Broad Street Partners. He used to say, "Never waste a good crisis." And I completely agree with that. I think that's how you grow. That's where you're built, and that's where you grow. So
that's the only time change happens.
Yep.
If you really think about it, lasting change only happens because of crisis. I can't tell you how many times I come into an old company and they say, we had this problem back in the 50s, and that's the reason why we have 7 approvals for every single thing that happens nowadays. Well, guess what? It was a crisis that created it. Now we need to create a crisis to undo that process to be able to get you to move faster in a lot of cases. And that's exemplary. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Chris, of getting stuck into processes to the point where you don't do anything, right? Because there's so many people to check with and so many things, and it just demotivates people to actually try stuff, right? And the way things change is that people just take a leap of faith, try something, see how it goes, and learn along the way, and then just keep refining, right? But if you have all these processes like in place that just make people feel really demotivated, then that's why people sometimes leave big corporations, right? And they do startups because they don't want to have any parameters around them. They just want to try stuff and see where it goes. I have worked in startups, and I could tell you that it's great in one sense, and in another sense, it's like with zero process, it can be really pretty crazy too. So, and I'm sure Chris Stanley, you have probably gone through some of that too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I've never been like a big corporate guy. You know, I never, I don't think I would survive at like a Fortune 100 company. I just, because of the processes and the bureaucracy, I don't know, it just doesn't fit me. So I was really lucky to catch on with the small company I caught on with. I think I was the sixth or seventh employee, something like that, when I started there. And, it was very entrepreneurial at heart. There were still certainly some processes in place, but, for the most part, it was, let's just get good people in here and then sit down and make big decisions together as a team. Everybody throw input in, and that's kind of what we did. And we grew, and, there was a little bit of, additional processes and stuff that came in, but it was still pretty nimble compared to a lot of other places. But the big thing for me is freedom of time. And I want to travel. I have two young kids. I've got a 4-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son, and I really want to spend time with them. And I think that before I became a parent, I really, I was all in to push my legal career forward, and I was climbing the corporate ladder and loved it. But once I became a kid, or once I had a kid and became a father, I really started thinking about things a little bit differently. My time. If I'm working late or I have to go in on a Saturday or something like that, maybe I'm missing something, right? And so that started to kind of rub me a little bit the wrong way. And I started to think I'd really like to spend more time with, my family. So that was one thing. The other thing that happened is I had this really cool travel experience where, so I went with my family to Maine, and we had arranged for this lobsterman to take us out on this lobster boat. And I'd been to Maine before, or New England. I'd seen lobster boats, and I'm envisioning like like in Forrest Gump, the guy's big boat at the end that he's got. That's what I was envisioning. Well, the guy rolls up with like a canoe with a motor on it, basically, and we're going out in the Atlantic Ocean with this thing, and it just like my heart started pumping, and which added to I was scared, to be honest, but it added to the excitement. It was cool. But the sun rises really early up there in Maine. I mean, it's like, so far east that the sun rises like before 5 a.m. in summer. So we met this guy at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and he took us out. And it was just, there was something about that experience that it just really changed me a little bit, and really made me want to travel more and have more experiences like that. It was, it was sunrise, the fog was just lifting off the water. And, there was the adrenaline going from me being on this boat in the Atlantic Ocean. And when I got back to where we were staying, I wrote down a goal. And the goal was 5 years from today, I want to be able to leave my job and start a business or do what I want to do, have complete control of my time and travel wherever I want as much as I want 5 years from today. And that was July 1st, 2015 when I wrote that. And so that worked out, pretty darn close to that goal. And when I wrote that down, I didn't know if I really wanted to leave my job. Just kind of one of those things where I knew I wanted to travel more, and it just kind of developed from there. And then, real estate started kind of popping its head up again. And we started going hard after that. So that's really what that was about, was time with my kids and the ability to travel. Because the good thing about the real estate business, I can do it from anywhere. I can take a month-long trip to Europe or whatever, wherever I want to go, and can do my real estate from there. So that's a big part of it for me, is just time freedom, and then the ability to travel and spend time with my family.
That's awesome. I mean, you got so many passions that push you and perpetuate you forward. And there's moments that matter. Going back to the crisis conversation, you've had crisis in your life that helped catalyze and push you forward. Just like when you were in college and you were running the asset projections on that house, that was a crisis for you, because you started to realize that what you were learning might actually be something more impactful than in a totally different realm. And that's, you start to really question, am I on the right trajectory, or should I be doing something else? And then when you have your kids, that's a new crisis, because they're important to you. Their lives and the experiences are important to you. And I love that you're sharing these stories, and you're not just sharing them here, you're sharing them through writing, just like we were talking about the book that Chris shared. You've got your blog that you're sharing with people. And I love that, because people are getting tangible experience and stories from you. They actually have a community feel and outcome, right? You're not doing it to pat yourself on the back. I mean, already we know that you've given so many other people kudos for your success and your journey. So you're doing it to help embrace and build your community. And I just think that that's so much more powerful. And I love that because we can reflect on what you've gone through. And then we go through our own crisis and our own needs, and the whispers of our heart tell us that our passions are a little bit stronger than what we thought. You know, you said, I don't know if I really want to leave this job, but your heart told you, you do. And you made it happen.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it was that it just grew from there. I mean, honestly, when I first made that goal and thought about it, I didn't really know that people did that. You know, the people like kind of left. But then I started reading stories about it, and a lot of them were real estate related, which kind of, tied back to that college valuation that I had, that I ran that stuck with me. But yeah, so I've always liked writing. I've written kind of off and on as a freelance writer for the past, I don't know, 7 years probably. So I've got had a couple things published on blogs, or like ghost wrote some stuff for other publications. So, and I wouldn't do it consistently though. Like there'd be a period of time like, man, I want to write again. So I'd start writing, and then I put it down, and then I pick it up and put it down. But yeah, with this, I'm really passionate about real estate, and I've had a lot of people ask me, kind of the same questions. And so I started the blog. The website is www.thestanleyblog.com. I just started it. So I think there's 2 posts out there right now, and I've got like 5 that I've kind of started but haven't finished yet. And I'll probably do the same thing, pick it up and put it down, here and there. But I would like to, put a few things out every year that are just things that I care about that I want to put out in the world. And that's a way to connect with people for me, and it's fun. I have fun with it. I enjoy it. So feel free to check that out.
I appreciate it. I love that you're taking us on your journey with you, and it's through what you respect, which is your writing, your creativity, and everything that you're doing is actually impacting and empowering so many others. People out there, just like you said, you didn't know that people quit their corporate jobs and went into business ownership. There's so many people out there, especially in this community, that are making that hard decision this year, right now, in these moments. And knowing that somebody like you, who had a position that really should give you almost like a stability feel, right? It's over comforting to know that you've got that position at that young age and the capabilities you have to come out and try to build something for 8 or 9 months and have no traction.
Yeah.
I mean, that is empowering to us to see that, yeah, you went out there, you tried it, you put it out there, you still made the decision to chase your dreams, even though your ego was checked, even though you had to regrow and relearn. And I love that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And, to anybody who is in that position, I mean, the way I look at it, the way I looked at it for the past few years is, a lot of people talk about the W-2 paycheck that comes in twice a month, or, 26 times a year, as a safe, stable, thing, which, it feels that way because the money comes in on a regular basis, and, it feels safe and stable. But, think about how vulnerable that really is, right? I mean, you could walk in one day and the company's sold, and you got a new boss, and guess what? That new boss has somebody else that they like, better than you. Or you could come in one day, and then for no reason, somebody decides that they don't like you anymore, or a company needs to downsize because sales are down. I mean, it's stable until it isn't. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, I've been at the same place for 25 years, and I got a gold watch on the way out, and that was it, and a $100 severance package, and that's it. I mean, how many times have you heard people say that? I mean, I've heard people say that time and time and again. I saw it with my mom. I saw it with my dad. I mean, it just, it's stable till it isn't. It's not as stable as maybe it feels. And so, there are a lot of things you can do, that may feel risky, but like for real estate investing, for me, I actually don't think it's as risky as it's portrayed, especially when you focus on cash flow. I mean, the big risk that everybody thinks about is the crash of 2008, right? Because that was driven by, subprime mortgages. It was directly tied to real estate. So people right now, I think, believe that real estate is extremely risky. And it is, if you're out there speculating and you're trying to buy stuff, less than what it's worth to make money that way. But if what you're doing is you're buying cash flow streams, rent, and, therefore cash flow tends to be counter cyclical. So, as property values go down, rents go up. Right. So if you're buying for cash flow, and you actually, you study, what you're doing, I think that's a pretty darn safe investment. So, that's the one thing I'd say is, I know everybody thinks that W-2 is as safe as possible, but I don't know, maybe think about that a little bit. And the other piece of it too is, a lot of times, and with real estate, the tax benefits, of of real estate are huge too, right? The W-2 is the worst taxed piece of income that you can have. You know, I mean, Uncle Sam's going to take a big chunk out of that every time, but there are other ways that you can maybe make money that you know are much more beneficial from a tax standpoint. So those are kind of two of the you know balancing acts that I did to kind of make that decision.
Thanks for sharing that with us. That's powerful because people are going to hear how you've decided to make what, you know, the outsider's view is risky, you know, palatable for you. And I think that that's important if you're going into business for yourself or if you're going into real estate investment. You have to make sure that in your mind you feel comfortable with it and it's not overwhelming you, because the stress level, you don't want to trade one stress, the 9 to 5 stress and worried about getting fired, for another stress that, you know, might not be putting food on the table for your family because you're at the whim of the market. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yep. No doubt. Yep.
So I want to be considerate of everybody's time. We're kind of at the end of our hour here. We usually try to offer some kudos and comments. Chris, before we let you go, is there any last minute things you want to put out there for the community members or people that are thinking about getting into business for themselves?
You know, the only thing I'll say, I mean, what we're doing, if anybody is in the real estate space and they want to connect, feel free to reach out to me. Specifically, you know, if you're in the large multifamily space, we're looking to get into that, and there might be some mutually beneficial, you know, discussions or connections that we can make there. You know, we're really focusing right now on larger apartment buildings. We also are still continuing to invest in small multifamily, which is what we've done, you know, kind of our bread and butter to date. Also, you know, feel free to check out the blog and comment on there. Like I said, I have fun with that. There's only 2 posts on there now, but hopefully it'll be a space that we can build a community there too. And then other than that, you know, I mean, I'm a big proponent of real estate. I think if anybody's looking to invest, you know, I encourage you to look at that asset class because it's a lot more powerful than you might think from a, you know, a benefit of value appreciation, cash flow, and then also some tax benefits too. So definitely encourage people to look into that. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, Adam, I don't know if you're going to put my contact info out there in the notes, but you know, I'm around. So I'm looking to connect with people that are like-minded, or if there's anything I can do to help anybody, feel free to reach out.
That sounds good. I appreciate you so much, Chris. You're such a humble guy. You are just empowering for everybody that's around you. And you're like a battery. Like everybody gets around you and there's just energy all the time. And I love it. I love the excitement. I love the opportunity. And I appreciate you sharing your story with us today.
I appreciate it. I want to thank everybody for having me on. It was an honor to be here and definitely enjoyed the discussion. So excellent questions from everybody. And that was definitely a fun time. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
All right, guys. I appreciate you guys. Have a good day and stay safe out there.
Have a great rest of your
You
day,
too.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks again, Chris.